Many women over the age of 40 are struggling with weight gain, inflammation, and brain fog. What are your top three anti aging hacks for women over 40 to lose weight and feel good, Andrea?
So, Ben, I would say what my lane is, which is nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. So that's what I know. That's what I've been studying for the last 20 years. And I really feel like women, as we get into our 40s and we're entering into perimenopause and menopause, we really want to focus on those three areas. So whole foods, nutrition, and lifestyle. So what that incorporates exercise, that incorporates how to manage our stress levels, and then supplements. Now we don't want to out supplement good nutrition, but having the right supplements can really help with managing our symptoms and also helping with our overall health and well-being.
Okay, great. So let's dive deep into those three main things there, because I know we've had a conversation a few years ago, and I learned a lot from you, and you
Oh,
have a lot
thank you.
more
Thank you.
research coming out, which we'll talk about. With those three areas, though, nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. Let's talk about nutrition. What are some of the foods that we want to avoid, especially women over 40, foods that are inflammatory, that we know this to be inflammatory? You mentioned to eat whole foods, but what are some of those ingredients we're looking out for to avoid?
So I wrote a book many years ago called Unjunk Your Junk Food. So I would say at the top of my list would be unnecessary food additives. So what are those? So we're talking about high fructose corn syrup, we're talking about MSG, trans fats, artificial preservatives, preservatives that that we don't need in our foods like BHT, or when especially because we have so many other options these days, right? Artificial colors, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners. These are the things that I recommend us paying attention to and being mindful of, because not only do we now have research showing that a lot of these ingredients can be harmful to our health, but also as we go into perimenopause and menopause, a lot of them can actually trigger or exacerbate menopausal symptoms. So I would say be mindful of those ingredients. And then obviously things like that we know that can exacerbate our symptoms as well, like alcohol. For me, if I have any alcohol, I'm getting hot flashes. It's disrupting my sleep. My brain health doesn't, I don't, my brain doesn't work as optimally as I'd like it to work. Ultra processed foods, foods that have no nutritional values, those would be the ones at the top of my list.
That's great. All right. So we want to avoid these fake foods essentially. Stick with whole foods, foods that have a really short ingredient list or no ingredient list. Like when we look at eggs or avocados, like there's no ingredient list because it's what we see. That would be the game plan there. Stick with the whole foods is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, for me, yes, whole foods, absolutely. Now, I also come from a place of I understand. Listen, I've been there. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. Life is busy, and I get that convenience foods can be very helpful in a lot of cases. But what I've learned over the last 25 years of being in the health and wellness industry is that nowadays there's so many more options that are available. So even eating processed foods, and I'm not talking about like, processed foods like when it comes to oils. I'm talking about like the ultra processed foods. Even if you want to eat those, read the ingredients, understand what you're putting in your body, because there may be other options that taste just as great, but don't have those artificial ingredients or those ingredients that that we want to avoid or be mindful of by putting in our body.
Well said. I agree 100%. All right. Let's
Thank
move
you.
on to lifestyle. You mentioned
Yeah.
movement and exercise. Could you give us
Yes.
some more like practical ways to adopt this healthy lifestyle?
So when we go into perimenopause and menopause, we know according to our research, and I know we'll talk about this, is that we did an anxiety survey, and our anxiety survey showed us that 66% of women are more stressed now in perimenopause and menopause than they were before they got here, and we're less able to cope with it. So really coming up with some strategies that help you handle and cope with stress are very important. So what does that look like? So exercise is a big one, movement in general. And when we're exercising, we want to look at lifting heavy things. We want to look at weight bearing exercises because that's important for a lot of different things, including managing our stress. We want to look at walks in nature. We know Shinru Roku, right? I always like forget Shinru Roku. So we want to make sure that we have it, which is it's forest bathing. So we want to help to calm those cortisol levels, calm our stress, and walking in nature has been proven to help us do that. Whether that means avoiding things that create stress for you, setting boundaries, maybe not being with people who you feel exacerbate your stress, right? So putting boundaries around those people, maybe not watching the news so much if that's creating a lot of stress for you, spending time with family that you love, friends that you love, pets that you love, deep breathing, meditation, journaling, reading. I mean, I could go on and on. anything that helps you to relax is really important. So those would be some lifestyle strategies. And then obviously the exercise, like I touched on. So movement is really key, really important for helping to manage our blood sugar, helping to manage our stress, helping with weight management. It helps us with brain health. It helps us with so many different things. So those would be the lifestyle strategies that I'd love to see you really pay attention to as you go into this phase of life.
That's great, and I love the idea of finding an activity that you enjoy doing. That could also be a combination of exercise. Like for example, I play basketball on Sundays with my friends, and that's a hell of a workout. It is exercise, but I enjoy it so much. It's not. It doesn't feel like I'm exercising. I'm just having fun and also getting activity at the same time. So you mentioned a few things there, and pick and choose, right? Maybe that is going outside, walking with nature. Pickleball is huge these days. It's blowing up, so maybe it's pickleball. I mean, whatever it is.
Whatever it is that you love to do. And by the way, I'm in a basketball I love basketball. My
Yeah,
daughter plays high level basketball,
love
and
it.
I'm playing basketball and practicing and working out with them, like, it's amazing. So I'm on the same page about basketball. Little known fact about me, I
That's cool.
quite love basketball.
I love that. Yeah, it's my favorite sport. It's, that's really cool that your
That's
daughter's playing it.
awesome. Yeah,
Okay, so let's move on to supplementation. I'm
yeah.
also, like you, a big fan of supplementation.
Mm.
And what are the key supplements that you have found work really well for those over for women over 40?
So I've done a lot of research on obviously ingredients with food, but now over the last several years, I've really paid attention to ingredients when it comes to supplements. And I really believe, as you know, I always say I'm an N of one, and I know you love doing N of one as well. And I always love to try different ingredients. And then not only am I trying it on myself, but I'm also reading the research, I'm reading how it affects different women. And I've really narrowed my intake of supplements because I've become much more picky about what I'm putting in my body now that I'm in menopause. And I want your listeners to also be mindful and be discerning about what they're putting, because you will hear a lot of information from a lot of different people, especially on social media. You're like, "Oh, take this, it'll reverse gray hair," or take that. And when you take things that, first of all, like for example, like take copper or take zinc, and you're taking things and you're not taking it in combinations with other things, you're just going to put other things out of alignment. So just be mindful of what you're putting in your body. And I can't stress that enough. So for me and the research that I've done, I really found, so I find we have foundational supplements that women in perimenopause and menopause can benefit tremendously from. And by the way, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be eating these foods as well. Absolutely start with nutrition. The basis is always nutrition, and then add in your supplements. So what would those be? Number one, number two, and number three would be magnesium, fiber, and omega 3s. Those are my, like, we should all be looking at eating those foods and supplementing with them as well. So, magnesium, we know, is responsible for hundreds of functions in our body. And as I mentioned earlier, when we go into perimenopause and menopause, we're more stressed. When we're more stressed, we actually deplete magnesium from our body. When magnesium is depleted, we become more stressed. So it
Mm.
becomes this vicious cycle. So making sure you have enough is important. Also, there's some great research that came out, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, that showed that having more magnesium when you're in menopause is actually really important for brain health. So I just want to I want to stress that magnesium is one of those key minerals, especially if you're having eye twitches or muscle cramps, or you're extremely tired. It actually helps with fatigue, which we know is the number one symptom of perimenopause and menopause. So magnesium, magnesium, magnesium. Then I love fiber. We want to make sure we're getting 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. Fiber is key for so many things, including digestion, including making sure that we're getting rid of things that our body no longer wants. Waste products, right? Food, hormone metabolites, we want them out of our body. So making sure that you are going to the bathroom every single day, at least once a day, is really important. It also helps to keep us full. It helps us, especially soluble fiber, prebiotic soluble fiber will help us absorb our minerals better. So making sure you're getting enough fiber is key as well. And then the last thing I really love is the omega 3s, as I mentioned. So a lot of women, as we go into perimenopause and menopause, they complain about itchy ears, dry skin, dry everywhere, and dry eyes. Watery eyes are also dry eyes. So omega 3s help to hydrate our skin from the inside out. So for me, if I'm taking my omega 3s, my eyes aren't watery or dry. They're not itchy. My ears aren't itchy, which is a very common symptom because the mucous membranes become dry as well when our estrogen levels go down. So, omega 3s, not only are they great for our skin for hydration, but also our brain, our heart, our hair, our skin, our nails. It's good for so many different things. So, those would be my top three recommendations.
That's great. So just to follow up on the magnesium, is there a specific type that you like more than others, or do you like kind of rotating them? Because we know there's glycinate, threonate, citrate. There's different ones out there. Is there a different type, I mean, a certain type that you like?
I love this question, Ben. So yes, so I always say I look at magnesium bisglycinate as the hero. It's the magnesium that has the red cape. If you love
Mm,
all the superhero movies, I think of magnesium as the one that's wearing that red cape because for several reasons. Number one, it's easily accessible, it's easily absorbed, and it's easy on our digestive system. So for those three reasons, and it's easy on our wallets, it is more budget friendly than let's say something like magnesium threonate, which I do love. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, but it could be a little bit more expensive. So if you're looking for that one type of magnesium that you feel kind of checks off all the boxes, to me, magnesium bisglycinate is the one to go with. And by the way, something that's crucial, which I didn't mention, is it's amazing for sleep. It'll
mhm.
help to just relax you because glycinate is attached to the amino acid glycine, which helps us to relax. It helps to relax our body, our muscles, so we could sleep better. And that is the third most common symptom of perimenopause and menopause. So it's an extremely important one.
Yeah, I love magnesium as well. How much do you take personally each day of magnesium?
I take a lot.
Me
And I
too.
know you probably do. I was gonna say, I know
Mhm.
you probably do too, but the recommended dosage is 300 milligrams, 3 to 350 for women, 3 to 320, 3 to 350. I take a lot more because I know it's incredible benefits. Now, it is important to mention that even though magnesium bisglycinate is gentle on the stomach, listen to your body. So if you're taking more and it's creating some type of loose stool or something that you feel isn't as optimal for you, and I personally, so Morphus, we have a line of supplements. We have our magnesium that has a tiny bit of oxide, which I absolutely love because in small amounts it actually helps with the absorption, which to me it's our number one product. It's like amazing for everything we talked about. So but if you find a magnesium that you're taking is causing some type of issue or side effect, scale back. It doesn't mean that you should stop taking it. Maybe just take a little bit less. So if you're taking 2 capsules or 3 capsules, take 1 capsule. Start with that. Or maybe start with a half a capsule, putting it into some yogurt or to a smoothie. Does not taste great in water. I will tell you that
Yes, yeah.
because it's such a big molecule and it's like becomes like it's like dusty. So put it into something that you could mix it into, but just start with a low dosage. And I do go with that for any supplement that you're taking. Sometimes even the directions on the bottle will say start with 1 scoop, but start small. If you've never taken it before, always start with a low dosage and work your way up.
Yeah, it's good advice. I personally take around 600, but I'm also 600 milligrams, but I'm also 6'2", 180 pounds. So I'm a lot bigger. And that's my sweet spot of magnesium. Now I want to get into you have these research abstracts coming out, which is super exciting. Congratulations, by the way. I mean, come on, that's huge news. I know this is something you've been working on for quite some time. How did this start? I know that you had some surveys on your website, and I want you to share. You shared this on my podcast a couple years ago, but chances are somebody watching or listening now maybe you didn't listen to that. So share about how this started, and then why did you want to write? Why did you decide to write these abstracts?
Sure. So I am just a naturally curious person by nature. I remember when I was young, I would sit with my mom. We would be like watching a TV show, and I'd be like, why? How come? When? How did that happen? And she'd be like, you always ask a lot of questions, which is a great thing. She always encouraged me to ask a lot of questions. So I think it's just in my nature to really want to understand how and why things happen. So years ago, I was at a party and I saw a friend of mine, an old friend, and I had asked her what she was doing, and she asked me what I was doing. And she said that she was creating an app for menopausal symptoms. And my first thought went to creating an app. Don't you actually need to have like a lot of symptoms to put on the app for people to choose from? Like, I thought there were probably like two or three. And
Mm,
she's like, yeah, there's like 35 to 40 different symptoms. And I was like, wow, there's that many? I didn't even realize that. And so I went home and my analytical brain went straight to creating a Google Doc, and really starting to track what those symptoms are. I started becoming interested in starting Morphus and getting into menopause and perimenopause. And then I quickly realized that there were like more than 80 different symptoms. And then I thought, wait a second, if there are that many symptoms, and I was looking at the research, I was looking at myself, my N of one, I was looking at friends, families, online, Facebook groups, like what were people complaining about? And I was tracking them. And then I thought, well, why don't we go to our community and ask them what they're suffering from or what they're experiencing? So we created our first survey, which is called our Signs and Symptoms Survey. It's our groundbreaking, our foundation survey that we started in 2022. And we now have almost 5,000 responses,
wow, that's awesome.
which is amazing. So I would love you to put a link below to our surveys because they're
Yeah.
ongoing. We are going to continue doing this research and collecting this data because We are learning so much. So now we know, according to the 5,000 responses, it's almost at 5,000 that we have, is that we know that the top three are, like I mentioned before, fatigue, brain fog, and sleep. So in my mind, I was always like, oh, hot flashes, they must be like the number one symptom, because that was one of my main symptoms. But little did I realize that there like are now 103 plus symptoms, which is what our research showed. And that's what we're going to that's what we have published in the research. So get this, Ben, you're going to love this. So as like you, I'm writing a book. It comes out in 2026. And I was writing my chapter. So I have a whole chapter 2, dedicated to the research that we're doing on symptomatology and doctor's visits and women in the workplace. Like, we're just really trying to dive into what our community is experiencing. So I wanted to understand, where did the 34 recognized symptoms. So if you Google or you search symptoms of menopause, you will see over and over again 34 recognized symptoms, 34, 34, 34. And I was like, oh, okay, so it must be somewhere published in the research, 34. Couldn't find the source. I emailed the Menopause Society. Where did it come from? They're like, we don't know where it
Wow.
originated from. And I'm like, this is insane to me. So we ended up finding it was from a source from like 2013. It was like on some PDF that we found online. And I'm like, this, like, to me, the fact that we had no published research on it was fascinating. So now we're going to have our abstract published, and we now know there's 103 plus symptoms. No more of the 30, maybe they're the 34 recognized, but we now know there are 103. And women, and we need to educate women about those symptoms, but also the doctors and the healthcare providers, so that they understand when women come into their office and they're not complaining of a hot flash or a night sweat or a mood swing, but they're complaining of fatigue and brain fog, that could possibly be because they're in perimenopause or menopause.
Wow, 103. I would have never guessed that. That's way more than what I would have personally guessed, and most people, I think, would guess. You mentioned the top 3: brain fog, well, fatigue, number 1, brain fog, number 2, and sleep, number 3. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's absolutely right.
Would you say that if we improved our sleep, it'll help with both fatigue and brain fog?
Oh, absolutely. But there's yes, yes, but there are also so many different reasons for fatigue. And one of
Yes.
the things that I always recommend, and especially when you're over the age of 35, because perimenopause can start as early as 35, sometimes earlier. I have women on my TikTok page, which is where my largest community lives, telling me that they're like in their early 30s, or maybe they're
Yeah.
33, and they're starting to experience it, or maybe their mother went into it a little bit earlier. So we say in general, it could start anytime after the age of 35. And it's about a 10 years, a decade before you go into menopause. So if you start to feel like things are off, then obviously speak to your healthcare provider and start doing the research. Start saying, what can I do that can try to help myself? So when it comes to fatigue, there could be 35 or 30 different reasons for fatigue. Number one thing I say is, go to your doctor and ask for a blood test. Go get your thyroid levels checked, all 6 markers for your thyroid. So you want to make sure you're not hypo, which is a low thyroid, because
Mhm.
our everything's changing, right? Our internal organs, our systems, they change as we go into perimenopause and menopause. Ask to check your vitamin D levels. Are they in the optimal level? If your vitamin D is deficient, you will be exhausted. Same thing for vitamin B12, same thing for your ferritin, which is your stored iron levels. So start there and then work your way from there, making sure you're hydrated, making sure you're sleeping, or you're trying to do your best to sleep. All of that, everything plays a role.
That's good. I love that idea of doing a full thyroid panel, vitamin D, and most people are vitamin D deficient.
Yeah.
That lab report that comes back is 30 to 70 is the usual range, and I would personally say from my research that if you're like 32 on that report, you're low, even though you're in that range. So there's a difference between the functional range, which is very narrow, versus the standard reference range. And getting that data, that's a good starting point. And to your
Yeah.
other point about women getting into perimenopause sooner, that's also because they're getting their period a lot earlier in life as well. 9 years
Can
old,
be.
10 years old. Compare that to 20, 30 years ago. It's dramatically changed. Have you seen that as well?
Oh, from a period standpoint,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have 2 daughters, and they have a lot of female friends, and absolutely, girls are getting their periods sooner, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's also what's causing or creating an early perimenopause, right? Makes
Yeah,
sense that that would happen.
it does
Okay.
make
So
sense.
getting testing done. Don't just guess, test. And it's important to be proactive here, not wait until you're 40, 45, but in your 30s. It's a good idea to do this either way. You were telling me offline about the different body parts that you were analyzing different symptoms based off of body parts that were affected, systems in the body. This
Systems.
was yeah, systems. This was fascinating. Could you share what you shared with me?
Absolutely. So this is brand new research. It's coming from our signs and symptoms survey because we're constantly analyzing. And what we found, so we looked at the body systems, and what we found is the largest so the nervous system is the most impacted system in the body when it comes to the 103 different symptoms. So we analyzed it based on those 103 plus symptoms, and we broke it down by the different body systems, by the 11 different systems. So the nervous system, 31% is
Mm.
impacted from the nervous system. We've got the endocrine system, which makes sense, which is 24.1%. And then we've got the digestive system at 11.2%. So when you look at it, and it makes sense because when we looked at our research for stress, we know that obviously we're so stressed as we go into this phase of life that it made sense that the nervous system is the number one system that's impacted. So for me, when it comes to learning to manage our systems, like manage our stress, help our systems, help our symptoms and manage our symptoms as well, is what can we do? So the things that we talked about, what can we do to help reduce those stress levels, which in turn helps to reduce our cortisol levels, which in turn will help us to sleep better, will help us to cope better. Everything is so interconnected. And it's an important thing that we focus on because it's not a one system thing, right? Because everything is interconnected. When you're not sleeping well, then you will be more stressed and your cortisol will rise and you may want to snack more and you may want to eat more unhealthy choices. So everything because of that, and those are just examples, everything is so interconnected that helping to balance all the systems in our body will help you feel better and will help you manage your perimenopause and menopause symptoms better as well.
It makes sense to me. Do you have an aura ring on? Is that what I see there?
I do.
Yeah,
Actually, I have an
you have
Oura
two.
ring and I'm testing well, so I'm testing out another ring, for the company, a company partner that we're doing. So I actually have 2 sleep rings. Yeah, and
Okay.
I'm obsessed with I've actually had my Oura ring for 4 years, and I'm obsessed with sleep. I actually love to call myself a menopause sleep hacker because
Yeah.
I wake up and the first thing I do is check my apps, and
Same.
then I'm like,
Yeah.
"Do they relate? Are they the same?" So I wanna see how much deep sleep I'm getting, and I also wanna see what my heart rate variability is.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to talk about. So I love tracking mine too. I've had my Aura Ring for many years, just like you. And first thing I do is I put it on the little charger and I look at my HRV, resting heart rate, deep sleep, REM sleep. How many times did I wake up? HRV is such a great metric for the nervous system. You said that 31% it comes of these symptoms that people just in the survey is from the nervous system dysregulation, right? So can you share a little bit more about how the nervous system works, maybe the parasympathetic, sympathetic, and then how, and I could share that if you want, and then how are you looking at HRV as a gauge for that?
Yeah, well, let me start, and then I'd love you to kind of
Okay.
chime in. So our nervous system is comprised of, obviously we've got our parasympathetic, we've got our sympathetic nervous systems, and our sympathetic nervous system is when we're in that fight or flight mode. So that's what we're in most of the time, especially nowadays. And
Yeah.
our parasympathetic, exactly, we're like, yep, life, that's what it's called.
That's right.
And then our parasympathetic mode is when we're in that rest and digest and repair mode. And the key is you want to have that beautiful balance between the two. And the issue is because we're living mostly in that chronic stress or that sympathetic mode, that it's harder for us to get into that parasympathetic mode. And the key, especially when it comes to sleep, it's really important that we get that we stimulate the parasympathetic mode because that's what's going to help us get that better night's sleep. So one thing before I would love you to chime in as well is when we analyzed our sleep data and why women aren't sleeping in perimenopause and menopause. So that's another abstract that's going to be published in the journal Menopause in December as well. We know that the number one reason that we are waking up in perimenopause and menopause is again due to stress.
Mm.
So we know that if we help to relax our bodies before we go to bed, whatever that is, based on all the things that we talked about earlier, we will get a better night's sleep. And chances are you won't wake up as often between that 2 and 4 a.m. marker or timestamp. And that's because when you're waking up during that time is our cortisol is rising at the wrong time again, which is related back to that stress. So anything that's going to help you to relax is important. And when it comes to heart rate variability, that's how our body is able to repair or cope or to I'm trying to like think the exact word, like how well we're able to recover
Yeah.
from our daily stress. So that's why we
Yeah.
want our HRV if possible. And unfortunately, for many of us, our HRV, our number is low for a lot of women that I speak to. So, how well are you able to recover from your stress from the day before will have a role in what those HRV numbers are. And again, how well you're coping with stress. What are you doing to help cope with stress? And especially, so throughout your day, of course, but also especially before you go to bed.
You explained it very well. I think it's one of the best metrics we could use, at least right now, to track the health of our nervous system. Of course, how you feel is important. We don't want to negate that ever. But as a metric goes, HRV is so important, heart rate variability. I recommend it to all my menopausal and perimenopausal students as a gauge to see how much stress we could apply to them, because stress is not necessarily bad unless you're not adapting to the stress. So the HRV, like you just said, is showing you if you're adapting well to the stress. So in my space, we have all these biohacks. We have cold plunges and saunas and red light therapy. And look, even ketosis and fasting, they're all stressors, exercise. It doesn't mean they're bad for you unless you do too much and you don't adapt. Then it is bad for you. So how do we know if we're adapting or not? The HRV. We want to see that trend up. We want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
not going below the baseline. And I found that genetics play a role with HRV. Like my fiance, her baseline HRV is like 155, which is,
What?
I
Her
know, because
baseline
her
HRV?
baseline HRV is 100,
Whoa!
and she's
Oh my
not some
gosh.
super athlete or anything. It's a genetic thing with her.
That's insane.
I know. But the goal is to find your average, maybe
Yeah.
test it for 7 to 14 days. Okay, this is your average, your baseline. Let's say it's 32. Then you have your average. And whenever you apply some stressors, whether it's intentional or you watch the news or whatever it is, and you see it drop, it means you didn't adapt to that stress. Something needs to change there. But if you apply the stress and you're at baseline or even higher, like you're getting stronger, you're actually getting that good balance of sympathetic to parasympathetic. I know for me, Andrea, when I was tracking mine, I think I got my Aura Ring 2019 or so. My baseline HRV was like around 3740. Now my baseline HRV is like 65, maybe
Amazing.
70, right? So,
That's amazing.
and I push I know I'm a guy. I'm not in menopause. I'm not over 40. Well, I'm 40, but I'm a guy. But I could push myself, and sometimes I'll push myself too much, and it'll drop.
Mhm.
Like I was
Right.
in Park City, Utah last week, and that elevation dramatically lowered my HRV to like the low 30s. My resting heart rate went up. Like that was a stress, and I saw that and I felt it as well.
It's so interesting you say that because so I like to flex. Sometimes I'm thinking next to your fiance, I'm like, whoa. But like I like to flex that my baseline is anywhere from 50 to 60. And then when
Great.
sometimes I'll see it go up to 70 and I'm like, yeah, there's my like, all right, there's my HRV. Like I'm so proud of it, right? But so not too long ago, when I went actually to present my posters, I went to Chicago to present my
Oh yeah.
research. And when I came back, I got a cold. I got sick and my HRV plummeted to like 18.
Mhm.
So even so if you're under the weather, you're not feeling good, that will affect your HRV as well.
Hey, I want to just briefly interrupt the video you're watching to share something with you. One of my favorite companies that I use for health and longevity and biohacking is a company called Bond Charge. And they have a whole range of incredible products, including the blue light blocking glasses you see me wear right now. But one of my favorite products from them is an infrared sauna blanket. Sauna blanket works by raising your heart rate to a workout or a training session. So you burn more calories while you're actually lying down and relaxing. Also, it's going to cause you to sweat. And one method of flushing out toxins from your body is through sweat. There's also one of my favorite benefits, this endorphin release. Every time I get out of the sauna blanket, I feel like I just got a 60-minute massage. So it's easy to set up. It's super convenient. Head over to bondcharge.com/keto camp. And if you use the coupon code KETOCAMP at checkout, you'll get 15% off your sauna blanket. And actually, any of their products are 15% off with that code. All right, let's get back to today's video. Yeah, I see that all the time when I get sick too. I got sick earlier this year. It went down to 11. My HRV, that's like so low.
You're like, "Whoa, are you alive?"
I know. I was just laying outside in the sun,
Oh
just
my
getting
gosh.
charged up. And the other metrics, right? The resting heart rate is also
Yeah.
important. And I know for me, when I eat too close to bed, all the metrics are off. The same thing happens to you?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so so my Oura Ring keeps yelling at me, and I'm joking, they're not yelling at me, but they're like, your resting heart rate is, it's coming down too late in the night. Are
Yes.
you eating too close to bed?
Yeah.
I'm like, yep,
It
yep,
knew.
yep. And then as soon as I eat, if I so when my daughter has basketball and we end it, she has starts at 6 and I have to eat around 5, then my heart rate is beautiful. It goes down
Mhm.
early in the evening and it's like the Oura ring is giving me, they're all excited for me. But yeah, absolutely. How close you eat to bed plays a massive role in your heart rate.
It does. The closer you eat to bed, the your heart it's gonna your body temperature is gonna increase, which is not what you want to fall asleep and get
Exactly.
deep sleep. So your resting heart rate will increase, HRV will drop. So I think a good rule of thumb is at least 3 hours no food before bed. I like to do 5 or 6 hours
I
personally.
was just gonna say 3 hours is a good rule, but it's still for me, it's not enough if I'm looking at it from a heart rate standpoint,
I
not from
agree.
a standpoint of being interrupted because my body's digesting instead of repairing, because that won't interfere with it, but from a heart rate point of view, yeah, it has to be more like 5 hours. I totally agree.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. What else have you done personally to see your HRV increase and your resting heart rate stay optimal?
So in addition to what we talked about, I think my supplements, I honestly and I will attribute my deep sleep, so HRV, deep sleep, staying asleep, quality of sleep, all of that will be because of our Sleep Us and because of our magnesium. So I formulated our Morphus Sleep Us myself, and I specifically chose ingredients that I know target the top 3 or top 2 reasons that women are waking up in perimenopause and menopause. Number 1, 2 to 4 a.m. because of stress. And then number 2 is because of bathroom visits. So
Yeah,
women are waking up so if you're waking up once a night to go pee, that is normal. But if you're waking up 2, 3, 4, 10 times a night, that is not normal. And we need to do something to help that. So the third reason, I'll go back to my supplements in a second, but the third reason we're waking up is because of night sweats. So you really want to make sure that whatever you're doing, if those are one of the 3 reasons or others like you have pain in your body or your mattress or your pillow isn't comfortable or your room is too noisy or your room is too light, all of that sleep hygiene is really important that you make sure you set yourself up for sleep success. And that to me, you start there. But
yeah,
I would say, combining our Morphus magnesium and our Morphus Sleep Us. So Sleep Us has lactium, which is a decaf peptide that helps to regulate cortisol levels. It has sustained release melatonin that will help you to stay asleep longer. It has our magnesium, which is I always say that's our magic. And then it also has L-theanine that helps to relax the brain. And then taking it with magnesium, adding more magnesium to your point before, because each capsule has about 50 milligrams. So I like to take more
yeah.
magnesium before bed. That combo, it increases my HRV. It helps me fall asleep, stay asleep, and the amount of deep sleep. I'm getting over 2 hours of
That's
deep sleep
great.
a night, which is incredible. But you have to
Yes.
be consistent. Like anything, you have to be consistent with taking it, but it works.
Yeah, that's great. And what about REM sleep? How much of that are you getting each night?
I'm getting anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours of REM sleep a night.
That's really those are rock star numbers.
I'm telling you, it's like
It's working.
I call it, it's like my hacks, my little hack, my supplement hacks.
Yeah, it's working. And I always tell
It
people
is.
if you could get at least 90 minutes of each of those, REM and deep, and maybe we could explain a little bit. REM is more rapid eye movement, memory processing, taking your memory from the day, short term memory, processing it for long term memory, helps with the brain fog. The deep sleep is more the delta
Restorative.
sleep, where you're activating the glymphatic system, you're burning fat, like you're doing a lot of repair from maybe a workout. Both are very important. And if you can get about 90 minutes of each at the minimum of each of those stages of sleep, you're going to feel pretty good. Would you agree, or would you say more than that?
I would definitely no, I would agree, and most people though aren't even getting close to that. So, like, I would
I
say
know.
on at like, especially women in perimenopause and menopause, if you're getting an hour of deep sleep, then you're doing well, So
True.
it's really so the hour and a half, I mean, of course, the more you get, the better, but because sleep is so disrupted for us, doing something that you can, like we talked about, to set yourself up for success is important. But if you're getting even an hour of the deep sleep, then, that's important too. Don't discount it because it's, obviously if you wake up feeling refreshed and you're not groggy or you're not exhausted and kind of pulling through your day, even if you're groggy for 15, 20 minutes, that's okay. But the rest of your day, you should have energy. You should be awake. That's really important. And, I love that I love that what you're talking about, and I love that you're so fat. You love metrics, and I do too. And I think that for a lot of women, though, I think just getting to be able to get that good night's sleep is important too. And to your point about the glymphatic system, that's when our brain is actually getting cleansed.
Mm.
And we want to get more deep sleep, more restorative sleep, because then that's what takes the debris out of our brain so that we can be cleansed throughout the night. So that's why, to your point, Ben, it's so important that we get that deep sleep. It's one of the key markers. And then obviously REM, like you said, is also memory consolidation. So it kind of puts everything together from your day. So both of those are really important.
I agree. Have you ever experimented with mouth taping?
I did. I have. So I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely a little bit strange.
It is.
So, but I do like it. So I have experimented with it. We know that it's great for the nitric oxide, increasing nitric oxide. It could be helpful for people who snore as well. So you're breathing. So you can explain what it is. Go ahead. You explain why it's so good
Yeah,
for us.
yeah. I mean, you just said it. Like the main thing is the nitric oxide. When we breathe through our mouth, we deplete nitric oxide. And you know you're a mouth breather if you wake up and your mouth is really dry. That's a sign there. But when you breathe through your nostrils, you actually increase nitric oxide, which is a really important gaseous molecule. It vasodilates, which opens up your arteries, allows blood flow and nutrients to be delivered to different cells and tissues. So breathing through your nose, not just at sleep, but throughout the whole day, is a majority of the day is really really important. So you mouth tape, and I agree, it's weird at first. It could feel a little claustrophobic, and you might want to rip it off, but you can breathe through it if you really need to.
Yeah,
But
there's a
it just
split once
train,
it
yeah.
gets to you.
And for most people, you could just do it for like 30 days or 60 days, and it just retrains you to be a nostril breather, which is the overall goal. So you did it. Did you notice? Did you do it for an extended period of time? Like, what did you notice?
Yeah, so I bought it like, I bought the melt tape from a company I found online, and I did, and that had like a little slit that so you can actually
Correct.
breathe. I don't know if I noticed anything in particular, but I wanted to try it because I heard such good things about it, and I do like it. And so so what I did was, because the strips can get a little bit costly depending on what your budget is. So what you could do is I went to the pharmacy and I bought, like, the white tape that you can put
Yeah.
on like gauze, and I just use the white tape. So it comes pretty thick, and then I'll use the white tape to actually do it. But sometimes it comes off. Sometimes I pull it off in the middle of the night. But yeah, I don't know if I can say I noticed anything in particular, but I love the idea behind it and why it's good for us. But it can feel weird, especially if your mouth is shut. It could be a
Mhm.
little bit awkward. So I totally get it if it's not for you. But definitely an interesting hack to try.
It is. I think it's worthwhile to try it, especially if you're a mouth breather at night.
Yeah.
And you could do something like you just did, just get a piece of tape. I mean, those companies wouldn't like us saying that, but you don't necessarily have to buy those strips. I do. I buy it for I'll just mention them. I use a company called Somnifix,
Yeah,
and I
that's what I've
use
tried.
yeah,
Somnifix. Exactly.
yeah, so I use theirs. I have it on auto ship, but you don't have to go that route. If you wanna save money, just get a piece of tape and, yeah, give it a shot. I think that's gonna be valuable to breathe through your nostrils. Go ahead.
And to your point, though, buying a proper that's made for that, it's gonna be thicker and better quality. So I'm just, trying to hack it. But
I get it.
absolutely, like buying Somnifix or one of those that actually are designed for that is going to be a better quality for sure.
I get it. So share a little bit more. You just presented in Chicago
I d
about these, abstracts. Could you share a little bit more about the abstracts? They're coming out in December. All 4 of them you said are coming out in December?
Yeah, so I
Wow.
I showcased posters at the
Yeah.
Menopause Society. So I was the only one that had, so, just me, the overachiever, of course, that A plus personality, that I actually had 4 posters. So we submitted
Wow.
4 posters, all 4 got accepted to be, so they're publishing our abstracts in the journal Menopause, in which is Lippincott Journals, in December, which is very exciting. So I showed the 4K. So what were they? They were the signs and symptoms survey, so that we showed the 103 plus symptoms. Our sleep issues survey is our number one, which I talked about the top reasons that we're not getting sleep. Our anxiety survey that I mentioned as well. And then also our doctor's visit survey. So we didn't talk
Mm,
about that. And if it's okay, that is so
please.
interesting. If we could talk about that for a minute, because this is fascinating. So what we wanted to know, it's no secret that doctors in the medical community and healthcare providers aren't trained. A lot of them aren't trained in medical school for menopause and perimenopause. I mean, we don't even learn about it in school. Like when I looked at my daughter's curriculum in grade 5, she's in grade 8 now. When I looked at her grade 5 curriculum, they were talking about puberty, no mention of perimenopause or menopause, not even in high school. So we don't learn about it. So we come into this phase of life as someone like myself, a Gen Xer. I mean, I had no idea, and my story is not unique. So many of us were like, "Wait, what's happening to our body. I mean, I was in perimenopause for 14 years, 11 of which I had no idea. I mean, think
Wow.
about that for a second. 11 out of the 14 years, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I was going crazy. I was gaining weight. I was losing weight. I was rageful. My moods were all over the place. I was all over the place. I was crying at the drop of a hat. I mean, I had so many of the 103 plus symptoms, but I didn't know why. And nobody around me knew why either. So that's why I'm so passionate about my education and my research, because if we can help one person. So Ben, you've got, whoever's listening to your podcast, and we help one person who now thought, okay, wait, phantom smells. I'm smelling something that other people aren't. I'm smelling smoke. I'm smelling gasoline. I'm smelling BO, but it doesn't actually exist. Maybe it's a perimenopause or menopause symptom. I'm
Mm.
not saying guaranteed it is, but at least now you have the vocabulary to speak to your doctor or healthcare provider about what could possibly be something that's going on with you. So we have a lot of work to help educate doctors and healthcare providers. So our doctor's visit survey that's being published, it's ongoing. We now have, I think it's like 1,500 responses, but at the time
Wow.
we had 1,050 responses. I always wait till after 1,000 responses until we analyze the data, because that to me, I'm like 1,000 is a really good number.
Good number. Yeah.
Really good number. So we asked the women if they're experiencing menopause symptoms or perimenopause symptoms. 90% or 89% said they were, which is a huge amount. And then we wanted to know, how many times did you have to visit your doctor before, or healthcare provider, before they made the connection between how you're feeling, any of those 103 plus symptoms, and it being perimenopause or menopause? These numbers are going to blow you away. So only 25% of the women said they went to their doctor once. Only 25%.
Wow.
75% of the women said they went between 2 and 5 plus times.
Wow.
And in many cases, women said they still don't have their answers.
Wow.
Still don't have their answers. So 18% went 4 to 5 times, and 17% saw their doctors more than 5 times.
Wow.
That's like a huge number, and 40% saw them 2 to 3 times. So that was the first thing. And then we wanted to know, okay, so you saw your doctor. Did your doctor or healthcare provider bring up the topic of perimenopause as a possible reason for how you're not feeling like yourself? Did they bring it up to you, or did you bring it up to them? So 75% of the women said that they brought it up to their doctor. 40% of the women said they brought it up and they were dismissed.
Hmm.
Only 10% said that their doctors brought it up to them.
Crazy.
Like, we have so much work to do. That's why, like,
Yes.
I'm so grateful to you, Ben. Like, you've had me on talking about this before. You're having me on again now. And you're a man, and yet I know you have a fiance. You have a mom. Like, I love the fact that you are bringing this awareness to your community, because it affects all of us. It doesn't only affect women; it affects everybody.
I agree, and the work that you're doing is so important to bring this to light. So no, I appreciate you and your research. That's some really good research.
Thanks.
Where can they find that when those abstracts are out in December?
Yeah, so it'll be, I'm guessing on the Menopause Society, menopausesociety.org's website,
Okay.
but you can find so we have white papers now. We have white papers even on our phantom smell survey as well. And we have a new survey that's dropping actually. So on my website, we have everything under research. So it's wearemorphus.com, and it's MORPHUS. So like it's metamorphosis. So morph us as a community. We made up the name. So it's wearemorphus.com. And if you go to the top at the navigation bar, it says research. You could see the surveys. We have 11. And then you can also read we have several white papers.
So we'll put that in the notes down below. Morphus. I just watched a TV show, Apple TV show. You know what I'm talking about? It's a show. I forget what it's called. A Big Door Surprise, I think. And there was a machine called the Morphus machine.
Oh,
You
really?
gotta you gotta check it out. Yeah, because it just reminds me of the brand there. I think it's a cool name. I like the name Morphus.
Okay.
So
Well, we
we are
made it up for
Morphus.
menopause, but
I know it's good. Wearemorphus.com, and then there's a research tab. You're writing a new book right now, and I know it's not finished and it's not going to be out until 2026, but maybe a general overview of what this book is going to be about. I think that would be super cool if you could share that.
yeah, thank you for asking. So it's really about what my lane is. So I always say my lane is nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. So everything that we talked about today, but we obviously dive way deeper into it. So we have a whole chapter on our research. And by that point, by the time it comes out, we'll have even more research to share and more numbers, which is so exciting, more data to share.
Hmm.
And then I have a whole chapter on supplements and a whole chapter on weight gain, why we're gaining weight in this phase of life. We have a whole chapter on digestion, because I always say, it's really important that we focus, and I'm a nutritionist, so I'm going to come from this point of view anyways. We love talking about poop. I mean, it is what it is. Like in
Yeah.
school, that's like our favorite topic, right? So digestion and going to the bathroom is really important. So it's really important that we have our sleep, like we talked about, but also our digestion. How, like, and everything is shifting and changing. So, you might get more gas and bloating and constipation and loose stools and perhaps indigestion, or maybe you can't eat as much because you're more full now, or you're not digesting as quickly as you did before. So we have a whole chapter on digestion, and then we have recipes, and then so it's awesome. There's
That
like
is awesome.
11, 12, 13 chapters, like, and I'm still in the process of writing it, so it's not due
Yes.
until the new year, but yeah, it's going to be amazing.
That's awesome. We'll bring you back when it's, about to
Thank
get
you.
released. We'll
Thank
dive
you.
into it. Can you share, if possible, a little bit about the reasons why women gain weight after 40?
There's so many different reasons. So our weight loss or our weight gain slash weight loss chapter is there. It shows now we're at 15 different reasons
Mm,
as to why we might be gaining weight in this phase of life. And it's everything from lack of sleep, like we talked about, hormones, like we talked about. That plays obviously a massive role. Our hormones that are declining, hydration, inability for many people to exercise or lack of movement, blood sugar. We didn't even really touch upon blood sugar, but
yeah.
blood sugar is a massive reason why could be a massive reason why we're gaining weight. Our blood sugar is more erratic. It's harder to regulate it. So that's why focusing on whole foods is really important, and muscle health. So our muscles, we're more prone to sarcopenia. We don't have as much muscle, so that could lead to insulin resistance, which could lead to, again, so everything, again, you see how it's all like
Yes.
interconnected, right, and tied in. And then, like we talked about, the systems that are changing. So perhaps that your thyroid, like we talked about earlier, getting those blood tests, because if your thyroid is hypo, then one of the side effects or symptoms is weight gain. So everything, again, is, you want to go get everything ruled out, speak to your doctor, and anything that we talk about, I'm very adamant about speaking to your doctor or healthcare provider first. Even if they're not familiar with menopause, educate them.
Yeah.
We have a list you can download from our website that has check boxes next to all the 103 symptoms. Give it to your doctor, give it to your healthcare provider. Tell them about, our website, or tell them about your what you're doing, your podcast or our podcast, like help to educate them so that they can inform themselves, so that they can better help their patients and the people that are seeing them, because this is going to take an effort from all of us to really make a difference. So that's kind of, that's where my mind goes to.
Yeah, that's so cool that you have that, and you're right. We gotta educate them. They should be open to the education. If they're not, it might be time to find a new doctor that is open to the education or to exploring it. I mean, it's kinda difficult if you've been working with the same doctor for, let's say, 10, 15 years, but they're just like, "Oh, that they're," if they just kinda, like, poo-poo the idea of what we're talking about here, then they work for you, essentially. Like, you could just hire a different doctor, like, find a different one. I know it's difficult to do, but you gotta work with a doctor that wants to work with you.
And there's so many doctors now, like at the Menopause Society's conference, it was the first year they were sold out. So there are a lot
Awesome.
more doctors and practitioners, healthcare providers, who want to learn about menopause. So find one. Telehealth these days, you could find so many companies that focus on it. I have a list of doctors that I could recommend. I mean, nurse practitioners also are really great. A lot of them are very familiar with menopause. So finding the right fit is important. And like you said, if you've and I know it's hard for a lot of women. I'll hear from a lot of women in our community saying they can't find a doctor even. I mean, that's a huge problem as well. So that's why maybe telehealth can come into play, or maybe working with a coach that can provide you with information that perhaps if they don't practice in your state or your province, then they could give you, some information that you can go to the doctor that you're seeing and ask for what they're recommending. So you might have to like work it a bit, but there is hope and there is help. So I want you to be able to feel good about that and not despair, because there's so many tools in our toolbox nowadays that, what, like we talked about, nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and or hormones, if that's what you choose to do, out of my lane. But I know that's helping a lot of women as well. And then finding that right doctor or healthcare provider, all of that can make a massive difference in how you feel.
Well said. There's You mentioned the 6th, thyroid test earlier, and I know there's gonna be somebody watching and listening, like, what are those 6 tests? Could you share those 6 tests?
Absolutely. So TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, free T, free T3, say that 10 times, free T4, your reverse T3, and then your thyroid antibodies, which are your TPO and your TG. So the reason why I really want you, and not most doctors will only test your TSH and possibly, if you're lucky, your free T3 and your free T4.
Yeah.
You really want to look at your antibodies as well, because that can be an indication of Hashimoto's, which is something that I had. It's an autoimmune issue. So I had
Don't have it anymore. Or
it's
it's in
it's
remission.
you're in remission.
No,
Oh, me?
you.
You're
I'm
saying
asking
me?
about because you
Oh,
said
sorry.
had. I
Oh, yeah,
said,
I had, so, I mean, so I still, my antibodies are still a little bit high, but in 2022, I had extremely high antibodies. It put me out for 2 months. I couldn't get out of
oof.
bed for 2
Oh my
months. And
gosh.
the way it showed up was through anxiety and massive depression. Like, I
Wow.
could not get out of bed for 2 months, and it wasn't even that long ago. So, yes, I've been working hard at making sure that my antibodies are, and had I not checked my antibodies, we may have not figured out what was wrong and why I couldn't get out of bed and why I couldn't function.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. So I hope everybody wrote that down. And if there is a guy watching this or listening to this, number one, kudos to you. Good job, because you have women in your life, and it's important to understand what's going on with them. But every person should get that thyroid test, those 6 markers done, men and women, all ages.
Yes, please, please, please.
I have a few more things that I want to ask you before we land the plane here.
Minerals, minerals, minerals. You hear a lot of people out there speaking about the benefits of taking minerals. And it is important because in this day and age, our crops, our fruits, and our vegetables, they are depleted of minerals. So you've heard of the keto flu, you've heard of symptoms doing keto and fasting. People just don't feel good sometimes. This is the number one reason why. So my go-to for replenishing my electrolytes and my minerals, for enhancing my immune system, for gut support, for detoxification, is Bean Minerals. It has fulvic and humic compounds, and these have over 70 trace minerals and really important electrolytes to replenish your body with. Check out Bean Minerals over at beanminerals.com. Use the coupon code Azadi, my last name, at checkout to get a nice discount. That is AZADI at checkout over at beanminerals.com.
I have a new book coming out, which we were talking about offline. It's called Metabolic Freedom, and it's all about the metabolism and how we're designed to use whatever substrate is available, use it for energy, for fuel, to feel really good, to buffer inflammation, age gracefully. Unfortunately, most people do not have metabolic freedom. They're essentially metabolically handcuffed.
Mm.
What would be your top 3 favorite methods for achieving this metabolic freedom concept? I know you gave a lot today,
I was like,
but if you have to pinpoint like 3, like as it pertains to the metabolism and metabolic health, what would be those top 3 things?
so I'd say obviously nutrition. So what are you eating? What are you choosing to put in your body? Then I would say I really love intermittent fasting. I know it doesn't
Same.
work for everybody, but I do like it. And there's some great experts out there, especially for fasting in perimenopause and menopause, that you could find books on that out there. I would say those are great. And then obviously exercise. So strength training in particular would
Mm.
be very important.
That's a good list. So eating real food, staying away from those artificial ingredients that you spoke about, intermittent fasting at the right pace that works for you. Everybody does it
Exactly.
differently, and then strength training, building lean muscle, which we know is important for being more insulin sensitive. It's important for preserving muscle mass and bone density. You talked about osteoporosis, osteopenia. We want to avoid these in the future for both men and women. So that's a good list. So nutrition, fasting, the right variation, and strength training. I like that.
Thank you.
In the book, I talk about all that, so I like it.
Thank you. I'm happy you agree with me.
I do. I have a final question. Before I do,
Yes.
share where my audience could find you, your social media, your podcast, your website. We know is We Are Morphus. Uh, Morphus. I said it correctly, right? We Are Morphus.
Morphus. Yep.
Yeah, I'll put that down below. But where else can they find you?
So I'm very active on TikTok at Andrea
Yes,
Donsky, and I love my TikTok community.
you're great on
Um,
your TikTok.
oh, thank you. I don't take myself too personal, too like
I
seriously, and
love
I
it.
like to have fun, and I love to educate, and so thank you. And then we're also on Instagram at Andrea Donsky, and then also at We Are Morphus. So and all social media really at We Are Morphus, but I myself live mostly on TikTok.
I love it. Okay, we'll put that down below. Here's the final question. This actually is so perfect for perimenopause, menopausal women, because you talked about stress and how they're more stressed and how the nervous system is taking a hit here.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned supplements. So this supplement is going to help with all of that: stress, weight gain, blood pressure. blood sugar levels, the nervous system. I call it vitamin G. And I don't know if you know, I think
Gratitude.
that,
I know
yeah,
that because
yeah,
I
you know it. So it is the gratitude, it's the
love
expression, the
gratitude.
feeling of gratitude, right? So that is a vitamin, and to me, it's a supplement, right? So we could take it all the
Huge.
time. So I want to ask you, what do you have vitamin G for today, Andrea?
Oh, first of all, Ben, I'm so grateful. So I do my gratitude list every single night before I
I
go to
love
bed.
it.
I'm a massive believer in gratitude, and the more grateful that we are for things, the more abundance we attract. So I'm just a big believer in
True.
gratitude. So for today, I would say being on your podcast. Thank you for having me back. I'm so grateful to be on your podcast. And I would say in general, just being able to do what I love to do, being able to help women in this phase of life, navigate this phase of life, educate them, provide them with solutions. I'd say I'm so grateful for that. And obviously, very grateful for my health and for being able to live the life that I walk and that I talk. And I'd say I'm very grateful for that and reap the rewards of it.
Well said.
If you enjoyed that conversation, you're gonna love a brand new interview I just released with Dr. William Li, all about the best foods to starve cancer, burn fat, repair DNA, and heal the body.
So I'm not saying yogurt's bad, I'm saying yogurt's good. However, the blueberry flavored yogurt, there's like a band of jelly. So you open it up, you stir it up, and now you've got your blueberry low-fat yogurt. Good for you, right? You got berries, you got low-fat. Wrong.